Hello everyone and welcome to the Test.io very first talk show. I am Evgenia, with me Stefan today as well, and together with our invited guests we will discuss the hottest topics in the community, and more specifically product-related topics. But before you start, if you have any questions or feedback, please leave it in Discord in channel general. We will devote some time at the end of the show to answering your questions as detailed as possible. So let's get started. The topic of today's show is user stories and product. And this means that today we will discuss the first feedback about the newest product on our platform, User Stories, and more specifically the release of the free version of User Stories to our customers, and what exactly it means to you, testers. We will also celebrate the release of the Test.io mobile app, Test Now, and we will have the insights into the future updates. Let me briefly introduce our guests. So later today, we will be joined by one of the great testers on the platform, Artyom from Belarus, as he is better known on the platform FOBA, and he will represent the tester's perspective in this discussion. Later today, we will be joined by our product manager, Alex, and together with Stefan, he will discuss the release of user stories to our customers. With me today, Jan, the co-founder of Test.io, and we will talk about the release of the Test.io app. Thank you, Jan, for joining us, and welcome.
Happy to be here.
So, as you know, a few weeks ago we released the first iteration of the Test.io mobile app, Test Now, and it is already available for iOS and Android. So, first of all, congratulations, Jan. I know how hard you and your team have been working on it.
Thank you. We did.
Could you give us an insight into the development process of the app?
Yeah, so we actually started developing this app, I think, almost 3 years ago. That is a long time. It was a side project for most of that time, meaning we had 2 developers on Friday evenings sitting together for 1 or 2 hours and trying to build something in a language with a framework they have never used before. After that, we figured out this might actually be something useful and valuable for testers to use. So over time, step by step, we expanded our effort. We didn't add actually more people, so to this day.
So it was just the 2 developers developing?
Indeed, just 2 developers, one for the Android version, and I'm actually developing myself on the iOS one.
Oh, wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, that's something I think CTOs should not always do, but in this case, I'm excited to do that. Almost like vacation between all the meetings. Indeed, and then we started to make a real plan for that. We started crowd testing for it, which was also a great experience, and finally released it. And we're now trying to do that quite frequently.
So you mentioned that you crowd tested. Could you share more insight into your experience with crowd testing on our platform? You use Test.io, right?
Of course. Right, so this was actually eye-opening to me. Working on the product, most of the time the feedback that you receive from people inside or outside the company are the problems, the things that go wrong, the things that need to be improved. And that can really skew the view you have on your own product. So getting into testing our own product again, and myself with crowd-test was eye-opening to the value that testers bring. I was actually quite amazed how fast and how thorough all the tests went. I used all the features for it. I used bug fix confirmations to get confirmation after fixing issues again. I ran multiple crowd tests of different types, and all of them were really, really, really good. A lot of bugs that I liked in there to build my own favorite tester crowd that I get invited to. So this was overall a really great experience. And we do this now. We try to do it on a weekly basis, in fact. It's crazy to release a new version every week if you're one engineer working on it. So this will not happen forever. It might actually not happen this week. But so far we have run at least 1 crowd test every week for both versions. And we try to continue to do so. Yeah.
Do you remember any tester names that delivered some good results?
Oh, that's a great question, and I should, but I don't.
Oh, that's okay.
No, I just used the system to mark their bugs as especially valuable, which put them into the favorite tester bucket for us, so they get invited first. But I didn't actually remember the names, sorry.
That's okay. What program language did you use?
Right, so the Android version is built with Kotlin, which is the successor of Java. We actually tried out Flutter, which is a little bit of a more modern approach that Google wants developers to take, but we just think it's not really ready yet. So there were too many issues, and we essentially rewrote the app again with Kotlin. On the iOS side, we use Swift, so it's fully native. We don't actually use any cross-platform tools like Xamarin for it. We use the basic programming languages directly with Swift and a lot of libraries that support us, like Firebase from Google. We are quite effective, building this out.
Great. And can you explain what features the app has right now?
Right, so we started small. There is the saying, probably people who have been watching Silicon Valley will know it. If you are not mortally mortified and embarrassed by the first release of your app, you have released too late already, which is, I guess, true for us as well. The first version of the app still only allows you to do bug reproductions. So you see all available reproductions, basically bugs that have been submitted in tests that you are already a part of. And you can go through them, you can dismiss them by just swiping on them, or view the details and then submit a reproduction, earning money with that. This is the one and only functionality the app has at the beginning. As a next step, we will add push notifications. So you will actually start to get annoyed, not just with emails, but also on your mobile device. But on the plus side, we will add a settings page to your profile on Test.io, so you can actually deactivate push notifications for mobile. You can also deactivate emails, but still receive push notifications. So hopefully this is a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
Those push notifications at the beginning still will be about telling you how many reproductions there are available and how much money there's available for you to earn, which is, I guess, quite interesting. But obviously a very important next step will be to go into invitations to actually participate in a test, submit bugs in there, and do all the other things. Maybe first we do bug fix confirmations, but invitations will follow soon.
Yeah, that sounds great. So is this your long-term vision for the app? Do you plan to replace the mobile version completely with the app?
I wish. It will take time. However, I would say this whole Test Now project is in fact much more than just a bunch of mobile apps that allow you to use our platform from your mobile device. It is really our beginning of reconsidering how you interact with the Test.io platform. When you view an invitation on a mobile app, for example, you need a compact view. You don't want to read through a lot of instructions. And you want to make a decision within seconds, just swiping left or right, for example. And this is a different form of interacting with the entire process of getting invited, accepting invitations, submitting bugs. And we want to reinvent that. We also want the web app to actually learn from that experience and make the web app better based on the experience with the mobile app. So short answer, yes. For the mobile experience, the mobile app, of course, is supposed to replace it at some point once we have built all the features. But we want to go even further and also have the web app learn from it.
Yeah, sounds like our testers will really like it.
Ooh,
And talking about testers, we have a tester online, Artyom. So Artyom, have you already installed the app and how do you like it so far?
Hi Evgeniy, hi everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this great show. When I heard such great announcement, an exciting announcement that the application was released, I immediately installed this application, and after I ran it, it was some kind of surprise because a lot of functionality wasn't implemented yet, and honestly, it's really difficult to switch between browser and mobile application. But anyway, talking about implemented part, about bugs for reproduction category, I just want to say that in general, the idea is great. But anyway, for example, I personally miss the ability to filter bugs for reproduction. I just want to be able to set the filter to display only forwarded, already accepted and approved by team leader bug reports. So anyway, after I understood that the app is not able to make my life much more easier, I still have this application on my mobile phone. That's true.
Thank you, Artyom, for your feedback. So, as Artyom mentioned, he would like to have a functionality of being able to sort reproductions by the status of the bug. Is this something you're considering?
Yes, that is actually the functionality of the web app already. So we are trying to optimize that. We are trying to see how to maximize the coverage for customers. Bugs that do not have a lot of reproductions are very interesting to be shown first to testers, for testers to pick up first. So we make sure that customers receive reproductions at all. From the tester point of view, I fully understand that getting critical bugs to reproduce first is more interesting. It brings more money as well. So we will try to balance it. It will not be one or the other, but we are definitely working on this.
And can you give us an insight into when the next update is coming? That's a very interesting question.
Yeah, so far we have done it weekly. Last week, version 1.3 for iOS was released. Android is a little bit behind. The push notification update, because we have actually a Christmas celebration in the office, this week might not happen on Friday. So this might be Friday next week. But we will try to keep a weekly rhythm as often as possible.
So Friday next week we can expect push notifications already.
That's the plan.
Oh wow, you're working so fast.
Well,
yeah. As I can see, we have some questions on Discord already for you, if you don't mind. So it has to ask, does Test Now app have bug reporting feature also?
Right, not yet. So right now it is really about submitting a reproduction for a bug. We are working on that. We definitely want to offer it as soon as possible.
Thank you. And the next question is, why out-of-memory crash bugs are not considered? Yeah.
So I'm not entirely sure what this is referring to. Maybe it's referring to the crowd test that we ran and out-of-memory bugs not being accepted in those, in which case I would have to refer to the team leader, I suppose. No, but generally speaking, we are looking for functional bugs that we actually put into the code. If your device runs out of memory, that can be an indication that we should change something to make sure it continues working. However, in our experience, it actually does, so that's why we don't consider it a bug. If this is about anything else, like any form of team leader rejection or a customer rejection in a different test, then of course the answer might be different. I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you very much, Jan, for joining us today and for taking your time to participate in our show. We will now have a short break of 5 minutes, and after the break, we will have Stefan talking about user stories together with our invited guest Alex, our product manager. So stay tuned, it will only get more interesting.
Yeah, hello also from my side. My name is Stefan, and I think you know me. I'm working in the team with together with Evgenia. I'm still a bit sick, so excuse me if I might cough or don't look the best today. I'm today here with our very own product manager, Alex.
Hello.
Alex, we have a product talk show about we have a talk show about product.
The best topic ever.
Talking about this, it seems to be a favorite topic. As a product manager, what are your main responsibilities?
Yes, first of all, hello everyone. Nice to be here and have you here also. I heard we have a couple of you online. This is awesome. To your question, actually we were talking about this before we started this. No joke, I was Googling just to see what is the internet telling about this kind of question because I was curious. You can Google it yourself just for fun. But what I do here at Tester mainly is to work with people and make sure that everyone is aligned and is going into the same direction, basically. Like this is kind of high level. Obviously, daily business is also about tickets, backlog, and making sure everything moves forward and test things also myself, but also with the crowd. But my main job, I would say, is really to make sure that people understand what certain products or features or ideas are about. Also be a facilitator in meetings, for example. Like if you have more than 3-4 people in a room, it's more than unlikely that everyone is on the same page. So you have to make sure that everyone gets out of the room on the same page. So yeah, my daily business is basically like talking a lot with people on business matters, on complex things, on easy things, on ideas, feedback. So yeah, I think that's
what I find very interesting is that you always achieve to involve everyone in product decisions. You don't just go through the wall with your head. Instead, you really know how to engage everyone, how to make everyone feel part of the product. Was that easy for you in the very beginning, or was that a learning process for you?
Actually, it is way easier for me than the other way because I'm not the type of guy who likes to make decisions that not everyone or most of the people are happy with. Even though I probably could, like if I would talk with Jan and we say this is the right way to go, and even though not everyone agrees, we could do that, but I don't want to do that. Which is why a while ago, actually now, like almost 2 years I think, we started to involve more people very early in the process. So usually when you look into other teams, you have a dedicated team that is like creating ideas and working on prototypes and everything, and only then at some point after the senior management or even the C-level management said yes, this is what we want, people get involved. And we do it, I would even say the opposite way, where like we involve people early on to ask like, hey, is this something you think makes sense? Because we are in our room, CSMs are here, you are there. We would need to make sure before we start even to invest time in something to get everyone on the same page, or also to get the feedback. Otherwise, we wouldn't get like you have another like perspective right now, and I don't have that in our daily business. So I need that to know if that makes sense, because sometimes you have the best idea and then you talk to one person and then you figure out yourself like this is the worst idea you ever had actually because you didn't know this and that and this. So we do that deliberately and on purpose. And I think, at least looking at it right now, how it works, it makes a lot of sense. People feel more involved. Like I always say, joking kind of, but I always say we have a lot of product managers actually at Tester because everyone is invested in the product. Everyone wants to change something, which is not always easy as well, because if you have a lot of people that have a like strong opinion about things, then it makes actually your job harder. But I rather see that than people that are like, I don't care what the product team is doing, whatever. I'm just here to do my job. So it's good to see.
Very good insights. Thank you. By the way, Evgenia will have a poll for you about user stories, which we'll talk about later on. She will share it on Discord, and you are invited to participate. Alex, you talked about how specific the product development process is at Test.io. Can you give us some insights about the process in general? How do changes in the product take place?
I will try to keep it as short as I can. I'm not known for short answers though, and also it's a quite complex process. Maybe I know we have a little more to cover about user stories, but this is actually quite a good example because it's so recent that we added this. And we also heard about Test Now, the app, where the process was a completely different one. So the usual process would look like that we usually start with ideation and feedback gathering. If there's something we see on the strategic level, or we maybe have a big issue to solve, that we identified either through feedback from CSMs, our customer support, our customer success team, or you guys from the community team, like, hey, testers are actually talking about this, like what's going on in this direction or with this feature. We hear that and we try to gather it as long as needed to then sit together, the product core team, I would say, which is Jan, me, but also, of course, designers, and also, of course, sometimes you are part of that as well as CSMs, to think about and kind of crush the idea itself. Like, this is the problem, this is how we try to solve it, does it make sense? Again, right? Like asking if that makes sense, if that is the right approach. And if we feel that way, usually we start to create early screens and prototypes, because it's almost always easier to discuss anything that is visualized already. Because if you just discuss ideas you have in your mind, it's very difficult. Which is why usually when we are in those sessions, we are at the whiteboard, we work with screens already, or we just like scribble something like a prototype to discuss. And that is like the very early stage. And then we start to form what we call squads, which is basically a team of very different people from community, from CSM, sometimes from sales, from product design, dev, and so on, to make sure we are well equipped to find the best solution to the product with our resources and time budget we have. And then we really start to work on it. We iterate on ideas, we discuss, we make decisions, and everyone is involved. And every voice, I would say, is equal in those squads. So if you say this is something I don't think makes sense or I can agree to as community manager, that is something we consider very seriously. And yeah, I will not rest, let's say, until everyone is really fine with the approach. Doesn't need to be happy, but it's okay, like we can go this direction. And then we really start to but iterate, implement on our staging environments, test it ourselves quite a lot. And for user stories, we released early into the beta phase with customers actually, so also testers.
You mentioned test it ourselves. You mean
yes.
You as a product manager test it, or you give it to the crowd?
Yes, it's a blessing and sometimes a burden to test everything. This is me mainly, because I really like to be able to see everything, not like being in charge and control. And it's also one downside of myself that I want to, and I'm very curious to see all the features that are going live, because sometimes that just like delays things. But I try at least to have a look on everything that is can be considered a bigger change, especially something that changes the user interface. That's something I really like to see. And since we don't have the biggest development and product team, we have all hands on deck usually always when we work on something big as user stories. Like there we used crowd testing, we used our internal people to test it also. But I would say most of the features I test myself before I then conduct a crowd test.
You quickly mentioned user stories. It's a big topic for all of us right now. It's
the
still
biggest.
Is, yeah. How did you come up with the idea to develop user stories? How was it born in the first place? And what motivated you to go in that direction?
First of all, it was not just my idea, which is almost always the case with the ideas. Also the tester app, that was something I thought I had the idea and pushed for it, but Jan also had the idea even before me, but we never talked about this. But then at some point we just figured out, hey, this would actually be nice to do and work on, so we started the side project. For user stories, this was more evolutionary, I would say. The fact that we, until now, or until recently, only offered bugs and test cases to our customers, and also to our testers as tasks and things they could work on and show their results with, is actually something that was way over time to be looked at and invested to. So we looked at I looked at, in this case, when I started to think about it, and when the topic was kind of our North Star for this year, or the big topic for this year, I started to look how or what we could do. We started with acceptance criteria. We started with like defining something or inventing even something that is like user stories, but not that much. So Jan, Alex, our designer, and Alex, our product manager, me, we also started to sit together to think about like what could make sense from, again, the ideation and like design process and approach. And we try to tie this to something bigger, which is, we never really talked about this publicly so far. So this is the first. It's also nothing we can actually like announce to be something to be released, but everyone who's not aware with session-based testing, make yourself aware, because that is one of the big topics, like the big strategic topics of the next, I would say, 1 or 2 years, where user stories is the very first step in that direction. So we want to get not away, but we want to extend the offering basically of bugs, test cases, and also some of the other experiments we had in the past, like test insights, for example, with something where a customer could go into the interface and always get something out of it. Sometimes you end up with a test where no bugs were forwarded by the team leader, or there were simply no bugs reported because the software is good. If you test on production, you don't always find something meaningful or in scope. So we wanted to make sure that customers always get something out of it, and also that testers, of course, get always the chance to like participate and to add value to this test. If you're a tester that is fairly new, you're maybe not the best to find bugs. When I started myself as a tester, like back then, I was not the best bug finder myself. So I was just looking at other testers and how they do it, and I didn't have the chance to like participate in any way. Now we have bug reproductions, which is one other step in this direction, where you almost always have the chance to earn something, of course, but also create value and have that positive feedback. Hey, I did something that is meaningful now to the customer of tester.
Have you been slower than the other testers when you were trying to finding bugs?
Back then, way slower. And also I found only usability issues basically. I always reported something. I worked with Frederick back then, one of our team leaders or former team leaders. And I watched him reporting bugs even, and I also got a lot of feedback from him in the early days. But I always was like looking at, this is actually quite difficult to understand in your software, so I was always filing bugs as usability basically, or usability as bugs, which is a very common mistake, I would say, because I wanted to give that feedback. I thought like, I have the best ideas and feedback, so your customer tester should know about this, which is obviously not what they were looking for in this case. So yeah, I was slower because I didn't have the experience and the routine to find bugs, and now it's actually quite different. I'm not the fastest, but I usually somehow manage, whenever a developer or engineer is finishing with something and give me a piece of software to test or look at, I always find something. I don't know how I do it. Like sometimes it's just like I have the sense, it's almost like a smell basically. I'm like, maybe there isn't bug, and then you actually find that bug, and this makes me so happy. I don't know about you, but I'm...
You know which dev creates which kind of bugs?
No, actually no. There's no pattern to it, but it's really like, I'm also when I specify the requirements of the feature myself with other people, of course, and also with the developer, and then we build this, so you would expect whatever we build, I also own when it comes to bugs, usually. But when you write something into a ticket and when you test something, this is like completely different worlds for me. If I test it, I also start to realize we forgot this and this and that, and this is not so good and this is bad. And then, as I said, like you then get this kind of click, and they're like, wait, if I do this and that, will it break? And often it does, which is good, because that is exactly what testing is about. And this is like the happy moments in my day.
We went super off topic. No, it was interesting to learn, and I asked. The question before was how did we come up with the idea of user stories, and the big term that we also communicated internally was going beyond bugs.
Yeah.
So we wanted to have more not only for customers but also for testers.
Yes.
And you talked a bit about the thought process, how to really make an amazing product not only for customers but also for testers. Can you elaborate on the thought process and product management to ensure our testers will love this product as well?
I would wish I would have figured out the best way or blueprint for that. it's really try and error, I would say. This is like iterating is the technical term for it, but try and error is really what we need to do. So what we did, of course, is we presented the idea and also some of the screens to some of the testers. We did some early feedback sessions with a few team leaders and you guys from the community team to see like, hey, is there something you would say or you would like to add or you would like to change? I think the idea was quite clear where we want to go. Also, as I said, part of session-based testing, and this always have a result and go beyond bugs, which actually is literally meant here. Like have more than just bugs. Not saying bugs are not important. Keep reporting bugs. But we really wanted to do something else and also get closer to the actual development process. Teams all over the world are actually following. Almost everyone is using user stories in some way. Yeah. And we wanted to basically support that. So to make a great, if you want to call it like that, a great product is, I think, again, back to the people. And in this case, it's not only people internally here in this office, but also people like testers, team leaders. They all have to get a certain buy-in and support that idea. And luckily, I would say, we figured out through a survey we ran over a couple of hundred testers, or with a couple of hundred testers, where they provide us with the answers. We figured out we are actually quite right with the first approach we had in mind. So after a few months, even while using this for a bunch of customers and a few hundred testers, we figured out this is actually awesome for the testers. And only back then, when we were deeply in development and even already thinking about when we release this and so on, so very early stage, late stage, we figured out this is actually even giving more to testers than we anticipated. So we were just like, hey, they have an extra money income channel, mostly because that is what they get at the end of the day.
I was about to ask,
Yeah.
what was the biggest realization or aha moment while the development process? Was it this moment?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you
Yeah,
elaborate?
sorry. When we got the survey results back, thanks by the way for everyone who participated in that. That was really, really helpful. I were personally very surprised that they like this feature so much, even though back then was just in testing and everything, and it was not like the payment is not figured out even yet, but we will come to that I think a bit later, to the next bigger update. But even in this stage, testers really love the feature because it gives them more insight. It solved some problems we didn't even intend to solve with it. Like sometimes features are just complex. That's why, because the feature concept we have in Test.io is not very common for customers in that way, but user stories are. So it's way easier for them to break down things and like explain everything. We also instructed our customers to use natural language to provide user stories, so testers can understand it no matter what experience they already have or what background. And I think that helped a lot to make this a successful product for testers. And we're not yet done, right? But this is, I think, a good foundation to start with, that it's really something testers can use not only to earn more money in a test, but really like, hey, I now understand better what the customer is actually looking for and interested in. So this really helps testers, I think, to do their testing, which ultimately helps them to find more bugs or better bugs, more severe issues and so on.
Yeah, I really like that. Basically, user stories are an extension of the feature description.
Yep.
So sometimes feature descriptions are not up to date or are very rudimentary. So it really helps to better understand the feature.
Yes.
And this was a big realization for all of us when we got back the results, and it was so clear afterwards. It's so clear now.
It makes so much sense right now,
It was not before. Yeah. You briefly talked about a next big update. What are future plans for the development of the user stories? What is right around the corner? What kind of updates will there be next year?
So actually, I don't know about next year yet. We try to keep our long-term planning as short as possible and necessary, so we are able to react to anything that changes in the market or on the user base or customers. But what is definitely to come and being actively worked on right now by developers, and the lead is Lucas here from the dev team, is a few more feedback, I would say feedback triggers for testers. So I don't know how or who already used user stories yet, but now you can provide the time, for example, you took to perform that user story test, basically, for that particular user story. We will add one more at least, which is what we call right now difficulty. I don't know if that will be the final term for it, but we want to know basically if testers say this is something that is rather complex to understand, or this is fairly easy. It doesn't have any impact on the payout or whatever. It's not being measured in that way. It's more for us to get feedback that we can then present to the customer, right? So we can't handle all the user story requests from our customers, so we need some more scale and more testers and more eyes and more opinions about it, and then we will give that feedback in some ways to customers back. What I think is the most exciting thing to come, I'm at least excited about it, and I guess all testers will be as well once it's there, is a more fair payout system. The payout system will ultimately depend on the feedback testers provide, but it's not like today I say this is a complex user story and then I get more money. Like this would be too easy and too easy to cheat also. But this is something we take into consideration over long term, basically. Like if this customer is a rather complex user story customer, we will provide more payout. If these user stories are rather easy, like, I don't know, something like login, that's it. That could be a user story. A tester or a user can log into the interface when they have an account. That is a fairly easy user story, and there we need to just balance the efforts testers have. So we really try to map the time and difficulty to the payouts, so it's fair, it is interesting still, and it's especially fair for those testers who want to execute the more complex user stories and would get otherwise underpaid for that. We don't want that. So this is, I think, the biggest update. There's also another update coming, which is not the best news, I guess, but we have to do it in order to make sure that this is something that lasts longer than just a few months, which is a certain limitation for testers. So it will not be, as it is right now, that everyone can do everything. There will be a certain limitation in place, similar to bug reproductions, where I think right now after 5 you can't reproduce the bug anymore so much, or not really at least. Something like this will also have to go into place, at least for now. So we have more time to get more experience, and maybe this is something that's going to change at some point. But this really depends on the customers, how they like the product, and obviously also how they pay for it. Go ahead.
But with this update, every tester will have the chance to do at least some user stories.
That's for sure,
test, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And also, maybe one specific on that, it's not like you have to be fast or so. You can go into a test as you're used to, and when you see there are user stories available, you can take your time to execute one user story. It's not like you have to go through, because otherwise someone else will be quicker with that one. You can reserve user stories for yourself. You can execute as many as you can, basically, in a test. But of course, as always with our tests and with crowd testing in general, it's beneficial if you're early in the test. That's something we can't kind of fix, unfortunately, sometimes. But we think, at least with the approach we have right now in mind, it's fair. And also here, right, we need feedback to make this like long-term fair for everyone.
Yeah, I remember the meeting that we had about this, and we really discussed long time to make it really a fair solution, and to make it also less competitive than the bug hunting is right now, right? Because that is a super competitive task, and sometimes the quality even suffers because you need to be the quickest. And we have different people in our crowd, so we also, and with different tasks we will provide, we want to have different personalities on these tasks. Not everyone is the most competitive and the quickest. Some others really want to take their time to test a user story thoroughly, and that's something we will achieve with the next update. I'm quite certain.
There's also something that is like, in general, one underlying concept or one of the foundations we want to achieve or get better at, that testers can, or a tester can go into a test and take the time needed, still get the payment out of it, which is like fair for the amount of time spent, and providing the value we need to convince customers to do the next test, to do the next contract with us, and so on. That is something we want to achieve. And as you said, like, not every tester is the same. I'm more like a visual guy and usability and all of this, even though I also find functional bugs. But maybe someone else likes to execute user stories, likes to get this kind of guidance. So really want to make sure that we offer basically not a lot, I would say, which is the wrong term here, but we offer what certain tester, you could say, profiles or like preparations demand, basically. So not everyone, as I said, is a bug finder, but you may be great to execute user stories, or you may be great to reproduce bugs, or you maybe have like 4 devices. That's something that not every tester can bring to the table. So we really want to utilize that more and give more chances for everyone to create value in a test, which is beyond bugs again.
Yeah.
And user stories is also not the last thing we want to do and go beyond bugs. So be prepared.
You briefly talked about a fair payout system. We have a question from Discord about the payout. The question is, will the payout for user stories be higher than now? That's quite a demanding question.
That's fine. It's like completely natural. Yes and no. Yes, it will be higher for those user stories we consider as more complex and therefore where we think or we expect testers to need more time to execute in a high quality way. But there will also be lower payout for those, or not maybe lower, but the same amount of payout, let's say at least, for those user stories we consider as quite easy and straightforward, where we only need 1 minute maybe to execute, or where a tester only needs 1 minute and not like 5. This is something we want to balance. There will not be huge gaps, obviously, because we want our customers not to provide a user story that takes an hour to complete. We have seen this already, but it should be about a few minutes. But 1 minute compared to 5 is times 5. So we need to make the adjustments and balancing of payout.
We soon have some more questions about user stories from from Discord. But before, let's hear from Artyom. What do you think as a tester about the user story product, and have you yourself completed some user stories?
As for the user stories, I personally like this functionality very much because it brings a lot of benefit from my point of view. In general, we had a great discussion with my colleagues, test.io community members, in Discord channel last week, and as a result of this conversation we achieved great results, and we created a list of pluses and minuses of user story. The first plus is that user story can be used as a material, even as an actual result of future bug reports. So having user stories, we will be able to understand the product faster, better, to look at the product from customer's point of view. The second positive point is that being more active in regular test cycles, in other test cycles where there is a big list of known or reported issues, we increase our reliability score, and we one day become a great tester. So being a great tester is a big advantage, and it's profitable because of increased payout, because of being able to apply for an open TL position in the future. So it's really great. So the third positive point is that we simply earn money, and it's also great. Yeah. Unfortunately, there's a list of minuses. The first one is that all user stories are equally paid, despite of the fact that in some cases you need only to confirm that some option button is available, is presented on the page. In other cases you must go through many steps and equally pay out for user stories with different difficulties. Is not fair. Yeah. Also, the minus is that we are not able to edit our previous selected result. For example, if you later understood that you selected the wrong option, user story doesn't work, you're not able to edit. And from some kind of minus is for me that I personally don't understand why the user story was implemented, how the flow in general is working. I mean, now that from my experience, I really want to know that how the flow is working. For example, customers when they sign up or sign in his account on Testeo, then create user stories that what is going on, it's not clear for me. So I just really want to be aware of the floor, how what is running behind the scene. It's not clear for me, and it's some kind of professional growth, maybe not to simply execute user stories, but being aware of what is going in background of this. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Artyom. We are back and live in the Berlin office. And we have some more questions from Discord. One that was asked before, what would you say is the value that user stories add to testers' everyday work? We covered the question a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe you can elaborate a bit more.
I think I would try to summarize it how I see things that might be different for each and every one. But what I find so interesting about this is that, which is already the case, but it's not as easy or easy to engage with. But with user stories, and given that at some point it's not yet, we just launched it to customers, many customers actually. Once we have enough customers with enough requests on user stories, or with enough user stories out there, a tester can basically log in any time of the day and participate in a test without having to like search through everything and read all the bug lists and so on. They can really just like start to execute something, like user stories in this case, provide value and get payment out of it. Obviously, you won't get rich just through user stories. Their bugs is still the best way to go, I would say. But there's always something to do, which is awesome. And we also want to build upon that and create more opportunities, basically more things that everyone can engage with. Again, we have a profile and like different skills and everything, and different ways to do testing. Yeah. And we want to support that. We want that everyone can log in and have something awesome to do they like to do. It's not like doesn't feel necessarily like the work, but hey, I actually like to go into this specific test with this device and do this and that. So I think that's the value we create, that there's something to do always.
Sounds really good. Yeah, we briefly talked about customers. What is the feedback from customers? Are they also super excited about the product?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, we also see from the usage of customers how much they like this new product. What is the customer feedback?
Just a bit, not background, but some kind of context. Since we are in the business-to-business world with our customers are not as hyped as you would expect something like an app is launched, which is like for everyone, right? So we don't have thousands of customers. And they also use Tester as a tool to do their work, to do their testing, which is like a serious business for them. So it is, I would say, challenging to make them excited about something, even though we very well are, and also the customers we work with for the beta phase are very, very happy with that. What I see so far from customers responding and also in their usage is that this totally makes sense, like actual things they said, this totally makes sense. Actually, this is something we considered for a while now, and thanks to Tester, we want to like go all in with it. So our customers really kind of get our intentions with it, even though we don't like have a big marketing campaign right now going on. Yeah, and also we gave it to the customers in a limited way, so we don't want to like be concerned with any customer that's going crazy with it, because we want to still be in charge and control, especially to prevent user stories that are not easy to execute or like not even a user story itself. But so far the feedback also here is very, very positive. So I would not be surprised if we see way more user stories in the next quarter. And also new customers we talked to, they really like the concept of user stories. Sales love user stories, which is a good indicator that this is something that we will see more often with more customers.
Because they hear it from their customers?
They hear it from their customers, but it also, when they bring it up in a negotiation with the customer, that actually like shows the customer, hey, there's more in it. It's not just, don't get me wrong on this, bugs, there's like I get something out of it all the time, which is
Yeah.
like a guarantee almost for them to, with any test, again, what we had before, I get value out of it, which is very important for them. So
Yeah.
even if they don't like cheer about user stories, because for them it's work, like creating user stories, write them, maintain them, review them, and so on, it's still something that drives the needle for them quite a lot. So they are excited in their own way, I would say.
Thank you. Another question from Discord.
Mhm.
Are you planning to add confirmation of user stories like screenshots?
Oh, yes, I forgot that actually in the update. Yes, so user stories themselves will have a screencast proof of work, we call it right now. We also at some point will involve team leaders in it, more in it basically, and review user stories and make sure that they're done right, which is similar to bug productions. We also have to prove your work basically, right? And we don't do that because we don't trust testers, but we do that just to make sure that everyone that is like having good thoughts about the executions and do a lot of serious and a big effort work in the platform is protected from those that sometimes try to cheat the system, which is normal in the community. And that's mainly our course of action for that. And also, of course, to learn what testers are doing, how they're doing it, which is very interesting for us. And yeah.
Yeah, another question. What's the impact of doing user stories on testers' overall score?
Good question. I actually
I can tell you.
I would actually deflect that question because that is your expertise. I know there is one, and I know actually.
Yeah, so
Talking out of the pocket, there's a ticket I still have to review where we make sure that the score is actually being affected, which is so difficult for me to review if you don't have a tester profile that is updating and everything.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
What's your
What
guess?
is the impact of user stories on the tester score?
Yeah, so it's highly affecting your reliability score. So
Makes
conducting user stories will increase your reliability score. Because it basically shows that you were active in a test, that you contributed to this test cycle, yeah, that's why we decided that it should affect the reliability.
So it's
score.
activity and reliability, like contributions. Which is the
you mean the whole score?
User stories in general, right? We have the contribution.
It's on
calendar.
it's on the
You see it
activity
there,
calendar. Right, it counts also as test cycle with activity, and it's reflected in the reliability score. Exactly. Yeah.
So go and do that.
You mentioned the planned changes before. There was a question from a tester. Will every tester get the same number of user stories in a particular test cycle, or will it vary from user to user?
So the first step, and like emphasizing the first in this, the first step is that everyone has the same chance, let's say, and it's a fair chance and fair system. So again, I kind of said it, but if you're early, you will have a bit more time to execute more user stories over time, which is kind of obvious when they're limited. Which is also, Jan didn't go into this detail so much, but he is actually one of the customers that actually would, if he would have the time and not have to go into meetings, he would sit in front of tester and waiting for the results to come in. He is one of that kind of customers, and that is why we like if testers do them early in the test, so we can make sure that we deliver at the end of a test, which is the same for bugs and bug reductions in general. This is also for team leaders, of course, important, because then team leaders, other testers, and also we ourselves have the chance within the time frame of a test to make sure that the test ends with a good result. Not good in terms of positive, but we have something to offer to the customer all the time. And if we have more time to guarantee and ensure that, the better it is for us. So, yeah, but of course, this is, as I said, the first step. If we see that this system is not working out the way we intended it to work out, or if we get the feedback, hey, this feels unfair, I always join a test and I don't get user stories, then there's something wrong. And we already have some ideas and thoughts about those kind of issues, or potential ways this could develop into. And for that, we might end up at some point, just examples and ideas with segmentation, with the onboarding. We also have relaunched a few weeks ago to cover that there. So you have to actually guarantee or show that you're good in user stories, and then we will only allow you to participate in user story tests, or just ideas, right? So this is like out of our kind of think tank way of looking at Test.io. Testers who go into a test and can only do user stories. Then we obviously want to make sure that they have enough to work or enough to participate, and otherwise it would just be like, hey, there's one user story you can do here, one there, and the amount of time you have to spend to understand what you're actually doing here and to read everything you need to read in order to participate is just not fair to the payout you get for user stories. But yeah, just consider everyone that this is a very early product. We think, or I think it's very stable as it is right now because we tested it across for quite some time. We put a lot of thoughts in it.
But we are still heavily working on it.
We are
there
working
will
on
be
it.
changes.
There will be changes. Yeah. Q1 will mainly be about getting more experience with customers and testers on both sides the same on the same way, to understand better what we maybe have missed or what is working very well and what is not working so well. And yeah, we're gonna take the next first quarter or the next couple of months to really learn, and then we start to go into the next version of it at some point. Yeah. Again, towards session-based testing as like the whole big picture around it, where user stories, which seems to be quite big right now, is only a very little thing. So yeah, session-based testing is something we really think might be a game changer even. Let's see. But yeah, user stories will be, it's not like the last time we're going to talk about user stories, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm also happy to hear more about session-based testing. Also, maybe have an interview with you. What are your thoughts about it? What is your vision for our product in regards to session-based testing? We asked you on Discord, how do you like executing user stories on the Test.io platform? You can take a look. The most voted answer is more user stories. The second most answered is I love user stories. They're fun and help me to understand the product, which was the realization that we had. On third place is user stories help me to earn good bucks.
Good.
Which is fair. I think compensating for the time our testers spend on a product is something that's just fair and which is important for us. I guess they are okay. Also, some people said not worth my effort. That is also fine for us if people say, or if they prefer to do other tasks on the platform. That is completely fine for it.
Agree.
Yeah. So
sounds good.
Very interesting. I could talk for hours with you.
Me too.
You're a very interesting guest. And
thanks. It's not like we haven't met before, right?
No, but it's just interesting to talk to you also in front of a camera. And there's really so much that I can learn from you and will learn from you. Anything you want to say to our tester community? Any wishes, advices, or feedback? Not only in regards to user stories, just in general.
There's an emotional one. So I just want to thank you, since it's like end of the year, soon it's Christmas and everything, even though that might be not your feast, but it's soon time to spend with family and friends. I really like that we have so many great people in our community that do a very good job, a job they haven't learned maybe, they just learned with us. As I said before, I myself was a tester when I started a tester, and a year later I started to join the company actually, and now I'm a product manager. Who would thought about this a couple of years ago? So keep on doing the good work, and also enjoy the free time and the holidays and everything. And yeah, I'm really amazed to learn each and every day about new testers, new projects, communities that are like building themselves up and then like become something very interesting for us to work and talk to. So yeah, I'm just grateful and happy that we have so many great people in our community that like every day log into the product we all spend so much time developing. And it's easy to forget that there are actual human beings behind the other part of the software that interacts with everything, and they have to go through everything. So yeah, thanks. And if you have any question or feedback to share, make sure that those people, Genia and Stefan, know about it, so I at some point also know about it, so we can change the things that matters to you. Yeah, just thank you.
Really nice words.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in today. This was our very first live stream. Yeah, we hope you liked the event.
I did.
Thanks, Evgenia, for preparing it so nicely.
Good
She
job.
really does a wonderful job when it comes down to events, and overall, it's really all well prepared. Yeah.
So the next thing would be a podcast, right? I heard this is like what you do today. So
I love podcasts. We could do a
I'm
podcast.
up for it.
Yeah.
If you're up for it, vote for it.
Yeah. So let us know in Discord and underneath the video what you liked about today's show.
Yeah,
what you
for sure.
would like to see improved. What other formats you would like to see. And I'm sure we can make it happen.
And topics, that would also be interesting, I think.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what do you want us to talk about? Because that is not always easy for you probably to get insights into. So we like your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye
Greetings
bye.
from Berlin. Bye
Have a good night or morning or whatever.